The galaxy was bleeding, scattered across 100 systems. The echoes of collapsed empires drifted like ghosts through radio waves. Trade routes once pulsing with life now lay dormant, choked by debris and silence. The Central Accord had fallen. Its diplomats vanished or dead, its fleets either scattered or assimilated into warring factions. What remained were the survivors, fractured worlds behind flickering shields, each afraid of the next betrayal. Among the ruins of the peace was a man named Elias Keene. He was not a soldier, not anymore. His last official rank had been revoked 5 years earlier when he disobeyed orders to evacuate a collapsing outpost. Instead, he stayed behind to evacuate civilians, refugees, mostly non-combatants. He saved 30 lives. The court-martial didn't care. He was labeled a liability and discarded. Now, drifting in an old, barely jumping freighter, Keene was alone. The ship's oxygen scrubbers were failing, and its NAV system glitched with every solar flare. Somewhere between the Curolian drift and the scattered moons of Vera, his course slipped off-grid, fuel reserves redlined. He sent out 3 distress beacons. None received a reply. He awoke to darkness and pain. The first thing he felt was pressure in his lungs. Oxygen. The next was warmth. Not synthetic warmth from a blanket or heater, but body warmth, the kind you can feel through a shared atmosphere. Something was nearby. His eyes opened to dim lighting and curved metallic walls, laced with veins of bioluminescent purple. Not human, not military. A soft hum filled the space, resonating through his chest in slow, rhythmic pulses. A figure sat at his side, slender, silver-skinned, large, dark eyes with no whites. It tilted its head as it observed him. No visible mouth. It made no sound. Keene jolted upright instinctively. Pain shot through his side. Broken ribs, maybe more. "You are safe." The voice wasn't spoken. It resonated inside his skull like a memory or dream. The alien's eyes remained fixed on him. He blinked, trying to recall the language. Not quite telepathy. Some form of neural resonance. He'd only encountered it once years ago, in a classified first contact briefing. "You rescued me," he said aloud. "We preserved you," the voice replied gently. "We found your vessel. It was failing. You were unresolved." Keene managed a weak laugh. "That sounds about right." Over the next hours, possibly days, he learned of them. They called themselves the Tiari, a nomadic species, non-territorial, drifting through space in bio-ships grown rather than built. Their kind avoided conflict not out of fear, but by principle. Violence, to them, was a miscalibration of need. They believed harmony was not an ideal, but a discipline. They should have left them to die. He asked them why they hadn't. "There was pain," the Tiari responded. "Pain is a signal of unfinished meaning. You had not completed your pattern." It wasn't mercy. It was belief. That was how they saw existence, as patterns, threads in a fabric too vast to see in full. To discard a thread too early was to risk unraveling something larger. But the act cost him. 3 days after his rescue, a patrol ship belonging to the Saracen Enclave intercepted the Tiari vessel. Keene watched from the inner hold as armed drones boarded without warning, demanding the surrender of the fugitive human. To the Enclave, he was a war criminal. The Tiari refused. They had no weapons, no shields. They simply sealed the doors and did not respond. The Enclave ship left, but not before tagging their vessel with beacon, one that would follow them wherever they fled. In the following weeks, Keene saw it happen. Supply lanes were cut off. Stations that once traded with the Tiari refused them entry. Messages were intercepted. A bounty was issued not for him, but for anyone harboring or aiding him. "They will not stop," he warned. "We did not expect them to," the Tiari replied. "You could have let me die." "We could have." He made the decision without telling them. Late one cycle, while the others slept in their deep dream chambers, Keene stole a pod and launched himself toward the edge of Saracen space. He thought he was sparing them, that by vanishing, the threat would vanish with him. He was wrong. The Saracen Enclave, like many tyrannies, did not care about guilt. They cared about example. The Tiari had disobeyed. They had aided the wrong kind. That could not be allowed. Keen later learned of the raising from a smuggler's broadcast. The Tiari convoy was declared destroyed. No survivors. He didn't believe it. Not fully. Some part of him refused. The part that remembered how one of them had taken his bloodied hand and held it not like a stranger, but like kin. He never returned to Earth. Instead, Elias Keen built stories. Whispers. Alliances. He found others who had seen the cruelty of those in power and had chosen not to forget. A Drellinian pilot who had smuggled refugees under the Iron Sun. A Vexry historian who preserved the names of lost species. A human politician whose child was saved by alien medics once labeled as xenospreaders. They were not warriors, but they remembered. Years passed, then decades. The Tiari became a myth. The kind spoken in half-truths and shadowy ports. A people of silence and light, destroyed for an act of kindness. Some believed they had never existed at all, that they were just a fable told by deserters and drunks. Keen aged. He no longer piloted ships, but taught others how to move unseen through controlled space. Some call him the Wraith Admiral. A joke he never acknowledged. He never told anyone what truly happened, or why he had given up everything for a people no one else had seen. Until one day, a signal appeared. Faint, fragmented, but familiar. Keen played it 27 times before he accepted what it was. The cadence of thought, the structure of syntax. Tiari. The voice was panicked, fractured, but clear. Contact lost, they come in fire. We do not flee, tell him, we remember. Then silence. No location. No beacon. Just a neural imprint encoded in raw radiation. A last breath hurled into the void. Elias Keen stood in the hollow of an ancient cruiser, staring at the blinking light. They had survived. Somehow, and they had remembered him. He activated a relay, not to Earth, not to any official channel, but to a network buried under decades of secrecy and sacrifice. One by one, ships began to respond. Not many, but enough. As he watched the fleet manifest, fractured, rusted, beautiful, he whispered a single promise to the empty room. This time, I come with fire. There was no dawn in the Malari expanse. Only the cold shimmer of starlight reflected in the ice rings of dead moons. The outpost that clung to the edge of this forgotten region was less a structure and more a wound stitched together by desperation. A forgotten colony, once bustling with Tiari bio-Templars and researchers, now served as a sanctuary for the last of their kind. Eva, one of the youngest surviving Tiari, stood by the observation deck, eyes turned toward the void. She was born long after the day of exile, after the destruction of the Elder Convoy, after the lie of their extinction became gospel. Her people no longer traveled. They hid, they adapted, and they remembered. Beside her, the soft pulse of the wall flickered, a signal of approaching danger. She didn't turn. She already knew. The same signature, the same pursuing shape. Iron regime. They had come again. The Tiari had no weapons. They refused to become what had once hunted them, but that didn't mean they were helpless. Their defenses were cloaked in invisibility, layered through harmonics and perception fields. Yet these new enemies, these dark armored zealots of the Iron regime, did not rely on sight or signal. They followed scent, fear. They consumed resistance and rewrote history in its silence. Eva shifted, her neural link tapping into the central matrix of the colony. Data flowed into her consciousness, life signs, power distribution, and external threats. 3 regime warships in orbit, no warnings, no communications, just presence. In the shadows of the commune hall, the elders deliberated, whispers like wind, gestures like falling petals. Tiari did not argue. They aligned thoughts through resonance. But the question that vibrated through the chamber was the same one Eva carried in her chest. Was it time to send the call? The call, capitalized in the stories, sacred in its simplicity, was not a weapon or a tactic. It was a memory encoded in frequency, a message entrusted to currents of space, a plea to the one who once promised, decades ago, never forget. Eva knew the stories. She had grown up with them, recited like prayers from her mother. He was dying, and we gave him life. In return, he gave us exile. And still we chose not to hate. She'd heard them so often that Elias Keene had become myth, a phantom stitched into their survival. But he was real. She'd seen the recordings, the trembling footage captured in failing light of the man who bled and still smiled, of the stranger who listened when no one else had. Now, as orbital shadows darkened the sky, the Tiari chose. Eva sent the call. She stood alone at the central harmonics node, her hand pressed to the living crystal. Her thoughts poured into it like water into soil, memory, intent, and something more ancient than language, grief tempered by hope. The signal shot into space, undirected, raw, burning like a falling star. Far above, aboard the regime's lead cruiser, Commander Malrix watched as the energy burst escaped the surface. He did not react. The TRE's tricks were beneath him. The order had given him authority absolute. Eradicate, purify, silence. His troops were already descending. Below, the TRE prepared for obliteration. They did not flee. They sang. Their voices merged into one trembling, radiant tone that made the walls shimmer with ancestral memory. In deep space, an aging courier vessel caught the pulse. It didn't matter how far Elias Keene had gone. Some frequencies didn't need range. They needed purpose. He sat frozen in the dim bridge, eyes closed as the message soaked through him. They were alive. The call had been clear, not desperate. There was no fear in the transmission, only truth. But the sublayer beneath it, encoded beneath resonance, spoke directly to him. They come in fire. He had expected this day. The Iron Regime had been spreading for years, claiming planets under pretense of order. Humanity, fractured as it was, remained neutral. Its core worlds benefited too much from regime trade to interfere. But Keene was no longer part of the core. His fleet, such as it was a scattered assembly of those left behind. It had no flags, no anthem. Its only unity was memory. Within hours, the message was decrypted across old networks. Signals passed through dead satellites, reawakened codes activating long-dormant relays. Pilots who once flew under 1,000 banners received the same pulse, felt the same unease. On the mining colony of Tar 6, a grizzled Vexry woman paused her drills and stared up at the black sky. In the ruins of Solace Station, twin brothers who once served as medics during the border collapse nodded silently as their console blinked awake for the first time in 8 years. In the heart of Forgotten Moon, deep within a vault of organic data, an old AI stirred and whispered a name, Keene. The first to respond were the ones who had nothing to lose. Keenan sent a rallying cry. He didn't broadcast orders or inspiration. He only repeated the message. They remembered. Now so must we. The fleet that formed was not a fleet by traditional standards. It was chaos tamed by belief. Rusted frigates, hack freighters, repurposed science vessels, even a living vessel piloted by a species that existed only in myth. They came in waves, not unity. But when they arrived, they fell into orbit, like a whisper becoming a storm. Back in the Malari expanse, the Tiari colony trembled under atmospheric pressure. The regime's dropships landed with bone-shaking force, their soldiers fanning out in perfect formation. Black armor, red visors, weapons that hummed with hunger. Commander Malrix descended last. He did not speak to the Tiari. He addressed the air, as though condemning the ground itself. You were warned. Eva stepped forward, her voice clear, but not loud. We were remembered. He raised his hand to strike her down. Then the sky tore open. The first ships dropped from the void like knives thrown by gods. No warning. No codes. Just presence. Keene's ship, the Valkeeper, led the charge. It was not beautiful. It was not fast. But it had been rebuilt from the wreckage of 5 fallen allies. It bore their scars with pride. The regime's orbitals fired first. The returning fleet did not respond with fire. Not immediately. They responded with shields, layered, reflective, harmonized at Tiari frequencies. Energy attacks dispersed in silent blooms of harmless light. Then came the noise. Not weapons. Not yet. But song. Thousands of signals merged into a singular resonance. A battle hymn formed of every species who had once been saved, once been silenced, once been forgotten. Even the Tiari heard it, and their voices joined, even as they stood facing death. It was not a counterattack. It was an awakening, and in that moment, the regime hesitated. The second wave did not hesitate. Keen watched the regime cruisers prepare to fire again, and this time, he gave the order. We don't conquer. We remind. The fleet moved. Shield became spears. Cloaked vessels uncloaked not to strike, but to blind. Hacking drones infiltrated regime networks, releasing corrupted memories, images of cruelty, of genocide, of 1,000 truths buried under doctrine. The regime, for the first time, faced not resistance, but reckoning. On the surface, Malrix felt his grip on certainty slipping. He turned to retreat, to regroup, but Eva stood firm. This was never your world, she said, though no one else heard it. And we were never yours to erase. As the sky lit with descending allies, the battlefield did not fall silent after the Iron Regime retreated. It breathed, wounded and alive, its lungs filled with fire, smoke, and a rising hum of voices long kept quiet. Wreckage littered the surface of the Malari expanse, fused into the crystalline structures of the Tiari colony, where alien vines had begun to grow over scorched steel. Eva walked among the remains, her steps light, careful. She was not celebrating. No one was. The cost of survival was always grief. Above, the Valkeeper remained in low orbit, its hull patched mid-combat by symbiotic tech, its engines glowing faintly with adaptive harmonics. Elias Keene stood on the bridge alone, the glass in front of him showing the slowly rotating colony below. His reflection looked older than he remembered. Scarred, yes, but more than that, tired. Not weary of action, but of waiting. The call had come, and they had answered, but now came the question that lingered over every victory. What comes after? Down on the surface, Eva convened with the remaining elders, who for the first time since exile emerged into full light. Their bodies were tall and etched with centuries of memory, their skin shimmering faintly with bioluminescent patterns that reacted to thought. They gathered around a wounded regime war machine that had been disabled without being destroyed. Not out of mercy, out of intent. We need to know what they'll do next, Eva said, her voice steady. They won't retreat forever, Elder Kieran replied. His voice had weight, not in volume, but in the echo of truth it carried. Their ideology is built not just on dominance, but denial. If we are alive, then their doctrine is false. They'll erase the contradiction, another elder murmured. No, Eva said, not if we change what the galaxy expects of us. She turned the machine and tapped into its interface. The device hissed and tried to resist, but the Tiari were masters of resonance. Information unfolded, not just targeting data, but directives, plans. The regime had not expected this world to matter. Their next wave was already in motion, aimed at a world 2 systems away. Human-populated, resource-rich, defenseless. Keen reviewed the data aboard the Valkeeper, jaw tightening. He'd seen this pattern before, divide and consume. The regime didn't conquer through brute force alone. It isolated voices, fractured unity, and rewrote reality one system at a time. We can't outrun it, he said aloud, though no one stood near. We have to expose it. But exposure wasn't enough. Truth, in this galaxy, had become negotiable. What they needed was proof that not even regime could silence. Unity not born of desperation, but of choice. A signal came through from Eva. She requested audience aboard the ship. When she arrived, cloaked in her people's ceremonial weave of threads and light, Keen bowed, not out of obligation, but recognition. You're not the girl from the stories, he said. I was never supposed to be, she replied, but you are the man from ours. He almost smiled. They stood at the center of the command ring, a projection of the galaxy spinning slowly between them, stars highlighted in red, where regime control had metastasized. There's a colony, Eva began, pointing to a faintly pulsing blue star. Port Asura, mostly human, partially post-settlement Vexery. They helped us once, during the scattering, quietly without asking. They're next. She nodded. We can't save every world. No, Keen agreed, but we can give one world the chance to fight back. And maybe that world gives the next one the same. The plan that formed was not elegant. It did not involve precision strikes or overwhelming force. It relied on unpredictability, on former enemies remembering who they were before the regime offered them safety and silence. It relied on story, memory, and courage. The fleet divided, small task groups spreading like wildfire into neighboring systems, reviving old beacons, reconnecting lost channels. They did not preach. They simply told the truth. They told the story of the Tiari's survival, of the regime's quiet purge, of the moment the forgotten returned. And people listened. On Port Asura, tension already hung thick in the air. The regime had arrived in orbit 3 days before, offering stability and opportunity. The colony's leaders were fractured. Some believed resistance was suicide. Others whispered of old alliances. Keen's arrival changed everything, not because he brought an armada, but because of who arrived with him. Eva stood before the colony's council and did what no Tiari had done since the genocide. She spoke in the voice of the broken. "You helped us when we had nothing," she said. "Now you're being offered the illusion of safety. But we've lived under that illusion before. You know what it cost us." The room was silent. "We're not asking you to fight," Keen added. "We're asking you to remember, to choose who you are before they choose for you." Not everyone joined them. Some ships broke away, fleeing into deeper space. But others, miners, traders, old war veterans, and quiet thinkers, stepped forward. They formed a ring of resistance, not a wall of weapons, but a net of signal and story. They turned the regime's own surveillance network against them, broadcasting intercepted orders across thousands of channels. Everywhere the regime tried to silence, new voices rose to counter them. Then came the final push. The regime, sensing a threat to their narrative control, launched a show of force. 12 cruisers descending on Port Asura with overwhelming firepower. The colony braced for annihilation, but the fleet was waiting, not to destroy, to reveal. As the regime ships fired, their attacks were intercepted, live-streamed, redirected, absorbed. Civilian ships flew through their formations, broadcasting holograms of their own past atrocities. The skies became screens, truth made visible. Entire planets watched in real time as the regime's doctrine fractured under the pressure of its own exposed contradictions. One by one, their ships faltered, not destroyed, disarmed. Crews defected mid-combat. AI systems reprogrammed themselves to cease hostilities when confronted with authenticated memory logs. In the command ship, Commander Malria's successor, General Run, watched as her control evaporated. She had been raised under regime thought, conditioned to believe in purity of order, but even she couldn't deny what she was seeing. She opened a channel to Keen. "I could destroy you," she said, her voice flat. "You could try," he replied, "or you could stop being the villain in someone else's story." The line went dead. Aboard her ship, General Wren sat for a long time. Then she gave a single whispered command: "Withdraw." In the days that followed, no parades were held. No flags were raised, but new beacons lit across forgotten sectors. Tiari and human, Vexri and hybrid, once separated voices now humming together, not in unison, but in harmony. Keen stood once more on the deck of the Valkeeper, watching the stars. Eva stood beside him, hands clasped behind her back. "We didn't win," she said softly. "No," he agreed, "but we remembered." And they answered. And in the distance, where stars once seemed silent, new signals pulsed into being. Faint, raw, but unmistakably alive. The call had not ended. It had only just begun.